right. Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of Skipper Talks. Today's topic is something which my mom asked me not to upload on YouTube. And my father also advised me not to add it on YouTube, but still, I will do it because I really need to tell this story to someone. So today I'm going to present to you my analysis on the ongoing war between Hamas and the Israeli Defense Forces. In my view, what might be the reason behind this offensive? What was the point what was the change in West Asian politics, geopolitics that might have led to this attack? And why we should really understand, not be afraid, and just talk about Gaza. So welcome back, fantastic folks. Welcome to another episode of Skipper Talks. Today, let's talk Gaza.
All right, let's take a look at how the last 12 hours have unfolded. Beginning at 3:30 GMT, Hamas started its military operation, firing thousands of rockets into Israel. An hour and a half later, fighters from Hamas's armed wing, the Qassam brigades, crossed into southern Israel by land and air. With the attack underway, Hamas announced the start of what it called Operation Al Aqsa Flood. In the hours since fighting began, videos started to emerge of Israeli soldiers being taken captive by Hamas fighters. And just after 6 GMT, footage showed fighting in and around the southern Israeli town of Sderot. One showed fighters taking over a police station. 4.5 hours after the first barrage of rocket fire from Gaza, Israel declared war, launching Operation Iron Swords in response.
Operation Al Aqsa Flood, the Hamas terrorist attack which killed 1,139 Israelis, was very aptly named, in my opinion. The flood this attack brought onto the Palestinians has swept away half of Gaza. It has reduced homes to rubble and hospitals into graveyards. It has led to the displacement of almost half of the Palestinian population, and most importantly, the flood sealed the fate of 29,000 Palestinians to death. 11,000 plus of these victims were children. In my view, both parties have blood on their hands. It is said that when two elephants fight, only the grass underneath gets trampled upon. The Palestinians, unfortunately, took the role of this ill-fated grass. Operation Sword of Iron, which the Israeli Defense Forces have unleashed, is a lesson in sheer terror and destruction. South Africa has termed this war as a genocide. Again, I must confess that I will try to remain unbiased and choose the middle path. We have to remember that Operation Al Aqsa Flood was a retaliation to the Israel-Saudi Arabia normalization deal which was being brokered by the American administration. In Benjamin Netanyahu's own words, this deal was quote-unquote historic. He went on to even say, and I quote again, that I think that under your leadership, Mr. President, referring to Joe Biden, we can forge a historic peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia. I think such a peace would go a long way to advance the end of the Arab-Israeli conflict, achieve reconciliation between the Islamic world and the Jewish state, and advance a genuine peace between Israelis and Palestinians. This is something within reach. That's what he said. Such is the irony of fate that just after a month, Benjamin Netanyahu said, and again I quote him, "Citizens of Israel, we are at war, not in an operation or in rounds, but at war." Hamas took 240 Israeli hostages with them into their network of underground tunnels. As of now, intelligence reports indicate that half of the remaining hostages might be dead. How many hostages were rescued by the IDF. 3. A total of 112 hostages have been freed by Hamas as a result of negotiations. But why I'm stressing the number 3 is because all these hostages were freed as a result of direct military operations and extractions. This, we should remember, that was one of the core, if not the most important mission of the entire offensive carried out by the Israeli Defense Forces. Just 3 of them. Just to be clear again, I am not on Benjamin Netanyahu's side, nor am I on Hamas's side. I am on the side of the Palestinians and those Israelis who were victims of geopolitics and the industrial military complex, and of course, maybe Iran. A normalization of ties would have led to peace and stability. Saudi Arabia, arguably the head of the Islamic world, has agreed, or rather, had agreed on a peace treaty with Israel. This deal would have led to a defense pact with the United States and a civil nuclear program. There was also a regional realignment after Iran, a Shia state, and Saudi Arabia, a Sunni state, re-established diplomatic ties after years of animosity. Riyadh would have fewer restrictions and more access to US arms sales, as well as develop its own nuclear program with the nod of the International Atomic Energy Association and the Nuclear Suppliers Group.
Now to the biggest deal in West Asia, a Saudi-Israel peace deal. A few years back, this would have been unthinkable, but now it looks within reach. Both sides say a deal is closer. Then what's the holdup? The Saudi demands. They want a NATO-style deal from the US, basically an Article 5 commitment. What does that mean? What is an Article 5-like commitment? An attack on Saudi Arabia will be seen as an attack on America. That's what Riyadh wants. Will they get it? We'll have to wait and see. What about Palestine? It's part of the list of demands, but no one seems to be losing sleep over it. The top priority is the Saudi-US Defense Pact. It was first discussed in 2022. That's when Joe Biden met MBS. He was on a trip to woo the Saudis. It was an awkward and frosty affair. Riyadh asked for a defense deal. The Biden administration apparently shot it down. So no NATO-like pact for Saudi Arabia. But it will get a defense pact like other US allies. Reports say it could. Same thing, something like a treaty, the kind that Washington has with Asian states or even Bahrain. And to make the deal sweeter, the US is throwing in a tag, a designation for Saudi Arabia. They'll be called a major non-NATO ally. This is a designation that Israel already has. By the way, Pakistan too has it. Pakistan is a major non-NATO ally for America. So this is what the Saudis are being offered.
The Islamic world was promised progress towards the creation of a Palestinian state, which is a hard sell for the most religious and far-right nationalist government in Israel's history. Saudi Arabia also offered to resume financial support to the Palestinians. But as expected, Iran had a problem with this deal. Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi had warned Saudi Arabia against making any deal with the Israelis. At the fringes of the United Nations General Assembly, President Raisi said, and I quote, "Such a deal will be a stab in the back of the Palestinian people and their resistance. Under no circumstances are the regional countries willing for the Islamic countries to abandon the sacred plight of the Palestinian people, because the liberation of the holy city of Jerusalem is at the core of all Muslims." Interestingly, Al Aqsa means compound of Islamic religious buildings that sit at the Temple Mount, also known as the Haram al-Sharif, in the old city of, you guessed it, Jerusalem. This is my hypothesis, and I did not find this reference or similarity anywhere else during my research. I point out that the similarity between what the Iranian president said and a month after the name of the Hamas operation both refer to Jerusalem. It's almost like a serial killer leaving a personalized signature at the scene of the crime. Let us look at what the Israelis are saying about Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The response to the terrorist attack on 7th October 2023 and the military campaign which followed. The normal trend in the world is that wartime leaders enjoy a bump in popularity during the initial stages of war. But as the conflict progresses, the sentiments start to change. Benjamin Netanyahu's approval rating as of now amongst Israelis stands at 40%, while the disapproval rate stands at 52%. According to various reports, only 15% of Israelis want Netanyahu to stay in office after the war. 56% of Israelis think that Benjamin Netanyahu should take public responsibility for the serious lapse seen on 7th of October. It is ludicrous to think how one of the most lethal intelligence agencies in the world, the Mossad, could not anticipate such a massive attack. How can you miss 12,000 rockets and hundreds of Hamas operatives? This intelligence failure of epic proportions is a case study in itself. To summarize, more than half of the Israeli population is at odds with their ruling party. Interestingly, before the 7th of October attacks, Benjamin Netanyahu was facing charges of fraud, bribery, and breach of trust in 3 cases filed in 2019, for which he can be sentenced to up to 10 years in jail and a fine if convicted. The Israeli Prime Minister's political career was on the downslide, and many felt that another term for Netanyahu was impossible. So, in my opinion, Benjamin Netanyahu is using this war to extend his time in office before he faces a possible conviction and a jail sentence. He is aware that a victory against Hamas will ensure that public sentiments run in his favor. Turn, rather. He wants to go down in history as the man who crushed Hamas. Interestingly, despite waning support from the Americans, the Israeli Prime Minister continues to go ahead with this conflict, probably even expanding it to Lebanon and Hezbollah. Joe Biden, his American counterpart, became so irritated and fed up with Benjamin Netanyahu that he called him an Now, we move on to the West Asian geopolitics and the shadow boxing match between Iran and the USA. According to a 2020 US State Department report, Iran provides $100 million to Hamas annually, which is around 830 crore rupees. Just like Hezbollah and the Houthis, Hamas also gets direct access to the Iranian stockpiles of weapons, such as missiles, drones, and other assorted firearms. Iran is a Shia power, and a majority of the Palestinians are Sunni Muslims. I don't think that the Iranian administration will lean towards the good interests of Sunni Palestinians, but that is just a thought, and I will explain why towards the end of the video, so hang on with me. To prove my hypothesis, Iran has differences with Saudi Arabia because of the dichotomy between Shias and Sunnis. In the same breath, I'll also tell that Israel over time has proved to be an important ally for the American administration in the Middle East. The multiple wars where the US administration gave support to the Israeli Defense Forces only accentuates the fact that in some ways, maybe the American government, I won't say the American people, rather, I'll say the government, has treated Israel as a power to balance the political equations in the Middle East. Now, let us focus on the main subject of this session: how collectively Palestinians have been neglected, or rather, I will say, let down by the entire world. Imagine if this were to happen to Taiwan. Do you think the world has the luxury to be deprived of this country, whose share in the semiconductor industry stands at 46%? China has been refraining from an all-out invasion of Taiwan because if it chooses to do so, then they will have to face the United States of America along with NATO. Why I mention Taiwan is because if a country is too valuable to fall, then the collective developed world will not let that happen. They have not even let Ukraine fall till now. Foreign diplomacy is traditionally driven by a nation's own self-interest. If you think that we live in an idealistic world, then it is an utter sham that you have been living in. The whole point of geopolitics is to always safeguard your own interests. It's a quid pro quo concept where no action is taken without measuring the outcome. Kautilya's Arthashastra on war and diplomacy in ancient India says that the principle of foreign policy is that nations act in their political, economic, and military self-interests. This is a timeless truth, even in today's world. For years, the Palestinian cause has been just a tool for emotional manipulation from various players to further their own interests. Yes, I do agree that all the wars that Israel has fought with its neighbors have not been due to the liberation of the Palestinian population, but rather all those wars have been an effort to displace the Jewish state from the geopolitics in West Asia. The Yom Kippur War was the last multi-country conflict in Israel's history. Israel has still engaged in military operations post that war, but it was against proxies and specific regions. It has been 50 years since the Yom Kippur War was fought. Now, coming back to the point, the Palestinians now do not have much to offer to the world. And generally, just like in life, if you have nothing to offer to the world, then your opinions will not matter to the world. 2.4 million Palestinians are now held up at Rafah. They have fled from the war in the north and have been displaced by incessant bombings and urban warfare. Egypt has closed its borders as the Israeli Defense Forces mulls over a ground offensive against the last bastion of Hamas in the south. Those Palestinians who have sympathy for Hamas should also think that while they suffer from death, destruction, and hunger, the main ringleaders are enjoying a life of luxury abroad. Most of them are in Qatar. At the same time, I would say to my Israeli friends that you can see what the ground reality is. Yes, every country has the right to defend itself from terrorist attacks, especially if there are horrific reports of your citizens being exposed to heinous crimes like rape, executions, and mutilations. But just understand that for every Israeli life that was lost on 7th of October, 25 Palestinian lives have also been extinguished. Israel's leadership has called for more enlistments. The economy is shrinking, and with every passing day, the death toll is rising. 1,139 Israelis and 29,000 Palestinians have become victims of geopolitics. War is mostly business, and if you look around the world at what is happening, unfortunately, business is booming. And finally, to end with, I would say that yes, we cannot compare the Holocaust with any other event in Earth's history. That was pure genocide. But the reasoning behind South Africa's declaration of genocide being carried out in Gaza can be backed with a definition of genocide, which is the deliberate killing of a large number of people from a particular nation or group with the aim to destroy that nation or group. As we speak, 2.4 million innocent Palestinians are stuck facing Egypt's iron walls, the Mediterranean Sea on their west, and a war-torn graveyard of rubble in the north. I hope better senses prevail, and I finally end this session by quoting the father of our Indian nation, who famously said that an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. Thank you. And basically I have challenged, I think, Americans, Israelis, Palestinian, Iran, Qatar. Yeah, the list just goes on and on. So anyways, that's what I had to say today. And fantastic folks, if you liked it, then please do like, share and comment. Even if you have a bad comment, if you want to tell me something, you can do so. I'll just take it as feedback. But don't forget to spread this message amongst everyone you know, especially the people who value peace over war, education over destruction. And yeah, I just hope that better senses prevail. Thank you so much. I'll be coming back to you with another episode really soon. Thank you, fantastic folks.